Today, it's a sad day. I'm going to be saying goodbye to an old friend, and that friend is Toys R Us. Now, as an adult who actually collects a lot of toys and spent a good chunk of his life doing so, Toys R Us was like the greatest place for a person to do that because of it being really the only real giant warehouse full of toys. Now, when I was younger, there was two. There was Child World, which had a panda, and then there was Toys R Us, which had Jeffrey, which was the big old Toys R Us mascot. And I remember the two were kind of in competition for a while, and then Child World kind of disappeared. I think they got bought out by Toys R Us because a lot of the Toys R Us simply became Child Worlds. But Toys R Us was the bigger one, and it was around a lot longer. I even had a close friend of mine who actually worked at Toys R Us for years. Um, so I've got a lot of these memories, and I'm going to go through a few of them. I remember as a kid, my dad owed me a birthday present, and so he brought me into Toys R Us and said, "You can have anything you want." And I thought that this was going to be like the most amazing thing. He had a limit on how much money I could spend, but he's like, "It can't be too much money." And I was overwhelmed. Like, you can pick anything out in there that you want, anything for this price. Obviously, I wasn't going to go buy like a bike or a thing, but I could get a lot of the action figures or play sets, and it became this thought in my head that I had to pick out the right one. I remember I was really into Transformers, and I wound up getting a Transformer called uh, Perceptor, who turned into a microscope. As far as the Transformers goes, I was far more into the ones that turned into objects. I really like Soundwave, who turned into a cassette, and Megatron's possibly my all-time favorite, turns into a gun. And so this one turned into a microscope, so it was right up my alley. Not that I didn't have Optimus Prime and all the cars, but there was just something about those figures that turned into an object. I even had one that turned into a camera, and I'm trying to remember its name now. So that was something that was always cool to me because you could just kind of like put it somewhere. An adult might see me, oh, that's an interesting tape player you have there, and then it's really a robot. For some reason, that was cool to me because it was like you're in your own little kid's world. And that's kind of what Toys R Us was. It was like its own little kid's world. My other big memories of it was every year I sent in at least one postcard when I was really young to a Nickelodeon contest where you could win a Toys R Us toy run. Because my fantasy of going through Toys R Us and just grabbing every toy off the shelf, just dumping them in there, and getting every toy you've ever wanted all in one day is pretty much every kid's fantasy. And I never won, unfortunately. I did not get to go through that and get every single toy that I ever wanted. So it was a real treat to be able to go to Toys R Us when you were really young because your parents weren't going to take you there. Like, what were they going to do? They didn't want to go in there. So for you to be able to go in there, it was like really cool. I felt because your mom wants to go shopping for groceries and stuff for the house, but not toys. um, the interesting thing is that once I was old enough, I remember sneaking over to Toys R Us a number of times. There was a Toys R Us that was in New Hampshire, and it was near a mall, and it was near BJ's, a wholesale club, and I would sneak off and go there. It was like walking distance. And at least one time I went to the Toys R Us. It was so late. My mom was like ready to kill me. She's like, "You're like, I told you to be here a half hour ago." And I was probably like around like 12 or 13 at the time because I started collecting toys when I was around 14. So that's a pretty young age. It's interesting how much I hit it because I would hide these things in my basement. I would buy toys and hide them because, first of all, a 14-year-old's not supposed to be playing with toys anymore. And you're supposed to be growing up and doing adult stuff and that sort of thing. And at the same time, um, at 14, you hide that because like everyone's just going to make fun of you. You're just a huge dork. Someday I will do a talk on how like everything that was dorky that they made fun of you for is now cool. And like all the dorks who like were told if you like watch Star Trek you're gonna have no friends and girls aren't gonna like you. Now it's like the most mainstream thing to the point where it's starting to get boring. Like Star Trek and Star Wars, it's like another movie comes out and it's like big deal. Meh, we've moved on. Right now, some geek in high school, and I don't even know what it is doing something that everyone's making fun of him for, and in 10 years it'll be the biggest thing and everyone will be all about it. Trust me, that's how it always goes. So uh, I would sneak off to Toys R Us and I would actually sometimes buy toys um, that you couldn't get anywhere else. I remember buying the Generation 2 Optimus Prime because I couldn't get because my Gen 1 had just disappeared. I think my mom gave it away to somebody, and I was always mad that she gave it away. So I had a Gen 1 uh, Optimus Prime. And then when the second one, the Gen 2s came out, I was like, my God, I have a second chance to get this toy, and I'm not going to let it down. And I bought a whole bunch of the Gen 2 Transformers to start my collection up. Around that time, too, uh, GI Joes had like disappeared off the shelves for a few years. They did like a GI Joe Extreme, and they went to just back to like the regular GI Joes, and they reissued them. And I just started buying them like crazy. So, um, Toys R Us has this like special place in my heart. And when I got a driver's license, it was one of the first places I went to buy toys and to supplement my collection. So, now that it's gone, I think a whole generation of kids is going to miss this opportunity of going to this near magical place with everything you've ever wanted in it, you know? And it's going to be, I think, kind of sad now. I mean, Walmart and Target have toy sections, but it's not a whole building full of toys. Um, and Now it seems more people just buy online. I mean, I think that's the thing is kids are going to buy toys online more and have them shipped to their house. And maybe that's a different feel. Maybe because I get excited when I see a package that I know I've got something cool coming in it, and I've done a few what's in the boxes here. So, but there's this strange part of me that thinks um, there's an end of an era now. Like it's over. You know, maybe all big stores are going to be gone except for the few things that we kind of need on a daily basis, the kind of things you have to run out and get. That maybe it's the day of going there, of taking your kid to the store, like my dad did, and saying, "The store's yours, kid. Go find something." Maybe that day is over, and that's kind of a sad thing to me. So I have to say goodbye to an old friend with Toys R Us closing all of their stores. There are certainly a lot less of them in the last few years, and I haven't been able to get out to them too often. Um, and I want to go on to the stories of my college days. So, because this was a really odd time, because uh, whenever I got stressed out, or it was school or dealing with the pressures of being a college student, um, I drove to the Toys R Us, and it was very stress relieving to me to just walk around among the toys and to uh, possibly even buy something. I often bought the new Star Wars figures because they had brought out new Star Wars figures for like the first time in possibly over a decade, because they were re-releasing the Star Wars, the original trilogy, with new and sometimes often terrible special effects. But it didn't matter. The new Star Wars figures were out, and I could buy Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. So I had a whole bunch of those in the 90s, and um, it was like my Zen place, my church. The place I went to renew myself was Toys R Us, because it was someplace I knew I wasn't going to run into anyone else. It was like my little place to go. And it's gone. Um, I don't collect as many toys as I used to because I don't have the room for them. And one of these days when I have the studio, one of my plans is to actually have a few display cases, and we're going to put some of those toys in them. Probably some of the GI Joes and the Transformers and the M.a.s.k vehicles, because those are what I have the most of. And if I have the room, probably the Masters of the Universe collection that I have. So those are the three big ones that I have that I got mostly at Toys R Us. Well, goodbye, old friend. It's been great knowing you my whole life. And in many ways, you were my church. You were the place I went to for spiritual renewal when things were down. And I can tell you the last time that I really went there for that, I had to go up to New Hampshire to buy a suit, and it wasn't for a good reason. The suit I was buying was for my father's funeral. So going up to New Hampshire, I knew that there was a Toys R Us there, and I just decided, you know what? I'm a little stressed out, and I think I'm going to walk in here and maybe pick through a toy and buy one. And I remembered that time. My dad said to me, "You can have anything in here. Any toy you want, you can have." And I was a kid again, just walking through there. And I was walking through there with my dad. And I did pick out a toy. And I still have it. And that's what Toys R Us is always going to mean to me. And now I have to say goodbye to my good old friend. It's been great knowing you my whole life. Like and subscribe. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you down the road.